It was a quiet night in Enfield, Illinois. The sky shimmered with 1,000 stars, and a young boy named Greg Garrett was in his backyard, chasing fireflies. It was around 9 p.m., the kind of night where the world feels calm, almost too calm. Greg laughed softly, running barefoot through the grass, a jar in his hand glowing faintly with captured light. But as he reached for another firefly, the laughter stopped. Something was there. From the darkness, a figure emerged. Something unnatural, inhuman. Greg froze. The creature was about 4 to 5 feet tall, its skin grey and wet, glistening under the starlight like something pulled from the depths of a nightmare. It had tiny, twisted arms ending in claws, 3 legs and eyes, enormous red eyes, glowing like flashlights in the dark. Greg screamed. The thing lunged. In an instant, the boy felt razor-sharp claws rip through his shoes as it brushed past him. Terrified, he ran, stumbling, crying, until he burst through the back door. Inside, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett were watching television when Greg came crashing in, hysterical, shaking and crying, trying to explain what he saw. They tried to calm him down, but his torn tennis shoes told a story words couldn't. Greg wasn't known for making things up, and that night, his terror was real. At that exact same moment, just down the street from the Garrett home, Henry McDaniel and his wife were returning home. As they pulled into their driveway, something immediately felt wrong. The house lights were on, and from inside, they could hear screaming. They rushed in, only to find their 2 children trembling, crying uncontrollably. The kids swore that something had tried to break in. They said it clawed at the front door, then tried forcing its way through the window air conditioner, rattling it violently. Henry tried to calm them, assuming it was just nerves, maybe a raccoon or a stray dog. But then, from the front door came a sound. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It wasn't like any animal Henry had ever heard. Slow, wet, heavy. Cautiously, he stepped forward and reached for the handle. The moment he pulled open the door, it was there. Standing in the shadows of the porch was the Enfield Horror, a grotesque grey creature, its 3 legs glistening in the dim light, tiny arms twitching near its chest, and 2 enormous pink eyes staring directly at him. Henry stumbled backward and slammed the door shut, his heart racing. He grabbed his flashlight and his .22 pistol, swung the door open again, and saw it clear as day. Later, he would tell police. It had 3 legs, a short body, 2 little arms coming out of its chest, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. It stood about 4.5 feet tall, greyish coloured. It was trying to get into the house! Henry fired once, twice, again. The creature hissed like a wild cat, then leapt away, soaring across the yard in 3 giant hops, covering nearly 75 feet, disappearing into the darkness beyond the railroad tracks. The bullets didn't kill it. They only proved one thing, whatever that thing was. It wasn't human. McDaniel immediately called the local police, but instead, the Illinois State Troopers arrived at the scene. The officers combed through the property, their flashlights cutting through the thick darkness, but there was no sign of the creature. No movement, no sound, just an unsettling stillness hanging in the air. Then they saw it, the evidence. Deep scratch marks carved into the siding of the house, still fresh, as if made only minutes earlier. And just below, in the soft ground, they found something even more disturbing. Footprints, 3 of them, each one marked with long, curved claws. 2 prints measured about 4 inches wide, while the third was slightly smaller, almost deformed. The troopers crouched over them, shining their lights closer, baffled. Whatever had been there wasn't any animal they knew. The spacing of the prints didn't match a human or any known creature in Illinois. The night was silent again, but everyone present could feel it. The sense that something unnatural had walked that ground. Something that shouldn't exist. On the night of May 6th, Henry McDaniel was jolted awake by the furious howling of neighborhood dogs, echoing through the stillness of the night. The sound was chaotic, panicked. Like every animal in town had sensed something approaching. Heart pounding, Henry pulled himself out of bed, reached for his gun, and made his way to the front door. He yanked it open and stepped into the cold night air, scanning the darkness. Then he saw it. The creature, the same one that had tried to break into his home nights earlier. From a distance, illuminated faintly by moonlight, the Enfield Horror moved slowly along the railroad tracks behind his house. It wasn't running this time. It wasn't hiding. It just glided along the trestles, unnaturally steady on its 3 legs, like it knew no one could stop it. Henry watched in stunned silence as it vanished into the darkness once again. In the days that followed, Henry McDaniel couldn't keep quiet. The encounter haunted him, every sound, every shadow reminding him of that night. He began telling anyone who would listen about the creature he saw. Word spread fast. Within days, Enfield transformed from a sleepy little town into a scene of chaos. Reporters, scientists, and thrill seekers flooded in, drawn by the legend of the Enfield Horror. Cameras flashed, vans lined the streets. Locals peeked from behind curtains as strangers roamed the fields with flashlights and rifles, hunting for something they didn't understand. It became a full-blown media circus, and the quiet town could no longer sleep. The situation spiraled so badly that the White County Sheriff personally warned McDaniel to stop talking, threatening to arrest him if he didn't keep his mouth shut. But the damage was done. People were obsessed. Within days, at least 5 so-called monster hunters were arrested for opening fire on what they described as a hairy grey thing near the railroad tracks. When brought before the judge, they didn't deny it. The judge simply shook his head and said, they were just out to raise hell. Not long after the hysteria began to fade, another sighting reignited the terror. Rick Rainbow, a news director for WWKI in Kokomo, Indiana, came to Enfield with 3 other men, determined to uncover the truth. Late one evening, near an abandoned house not far from the McDaniel residence, they saw it. The Enfield Horror. It stood in the shadows, its back turned toward them, its body hunched and grey, around 5 feet tall, moving with an eerie, unnatural rhythm. The men froze, hardly daring to breathe. They couldn't see its face, only the outline of something wrong, something not meant to exist. Then it screamed, a sound unlike anything they'd ever heard, a shrill, ungodly cry that cut through the night air like metal on glass. Rainbow managed to record that horrifying noise, though the tape was never released to the public. Over the following days, that same blood-curdling scream echoed across Enfield, heard by locals near the railroad tracks behind McDaniel's home. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. Witnesses said the creature leapt over the tracks one last time, disappearing into the darkness forever. No trace, no body, no answers. In 1978, a group of researchers reopened the mystery of the Enfield Horror, determined to make sense of the chaos that had gripped the small Illinois town years earlier. After digging through reports, interviews, and eyewitness statements, they found something surprising. Only 3 first-hand witnesses ever actually claimed to have seen the creature. Yet over time, those few accounts had been twisted, stretched, and retold so many times that the story grew into a legend, a bizarre game of telephone where each retelling added new horrors. The question remained, if all those reports were real, why was there no real evidence? No photographs of the scratches on the aluminum siding, no plaster casts of the 3-toed footprints, not even proof of the shredded tennis shoes young Greg Garrett wore that night. Was this ever truly investigated as a crime scene, or had the line between truth and hysteria blurred too much to tell? Some believed it was all an elaborate hoax, a stunt to draw attention and tourists to the sleepy town of Enfield. But even the skeptics couldn't explain how 2 separate neighbors, interviewed independently, gave identical descriptions of the same grotesque creature without ever speaking to each other first. And the marks on the ground, strange claw-like impressions, didn't match any known animal or indicate human tampering. In the decades since, the story of the Enfield Horror has faded into obscurity, forgotten by most, dismissed by others. But for those who still remember, one thought lingers like a chill in the dark. If that thing was real, and it simply disappeared, Where did it go? It hasn't been reported for almost 40 years. But that doesn't mean it's gone. Maybe, just maybe it's still out there, waiting for the next quiet town to fall asleep.